You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
Hey there YouTube, the Dapper Dinosaur here. Today I wanted to do something a bit lighthearted, and so I turned to the Gentile Matt Powell. Matt Powell, who is always good for some idiocy that even your average 6-year-old could see through. Today he's talking about dinosaurs and how they totally lived with humans. Of course, he means non-avian dinosaurs, but he won't admit that. Oh, also, Goy Matt here likes to add copyrighted music under his audio to make it hard to respond to him without getting demonetized. Here's the thing though. AI voice isolation is a thing, so I got rid of his music and added some wonderful music from the YouTube audio library. Without further ado, here he is.
Carbon-14 dating is a way of determining the age of certain archaeological artifacts of a biological origin up to about 50,000 years old.
50,000 years old. So, you know, almost 10 times longer than Matt thinks the universe has been around. Curious.
So I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question, why is it then that we find carbon-14 inside of dinosaur bones that are supposedly 65 million years old?
Well, for one thing, carbon-14 can be produced underground by any neutron source if there is nitrogen-14 around. Also, if you run any C14 test in an empty chamber, you're going to get an age that isn't zero. You're always going to get a carbon-14 signal because it's in the air, it's in contaminated samples, and there is no way to remove all of the matter from a test chamber. So, do these bones have carbon-14? Yeah, a bit. In some cases, they probably do. The problem is, there's really no way to be sure you have a true blank carbon source because of these reasons.
I would like an answer to that. People say dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago.
66 million, but that's okay.
Really? There's C14 inside the bones. According to this article, which is a scientific paper, it says that carbon-14 only lasts 50,000 years in any organism that it dies in. Yes.
Oh hey, a source I can actually go read. Neat. Also, this is not a scientific paper. It's on howstuffworks.com, which is not a peer-reviewed journal. The thing is, Matt has been informed of this. He's just a liar. The article he cites is basically a pop-sci explanation at about the high school level of the basics of how carbon-14 dating works. And it does not say that carbon-14 can only last 50,000 years. It says that the limit of dating of organic material via carbon-14 is about 50,000 to 60,000 years. It doesn't say this, but that's because after that point, the amount of carbon-14 is going to be so low that it will be indistinguishable from the background. Also, this article doesn't say that there's carbon-14 in dinosaur bones. It doesn't talk about dinosaur bones at all.
And soft tissue. We find soft tissue in all of these dinosaur bones. Blood cells with hemoglobin in the blood.
See that little tell there where he went from soft tissue to blood cells to hemoglobin? It's almost like he knows that there isn't actually any tissue. And it isn't even actually cells. But even stopping at hemoglobin isn't enough. What is found is heme, which is the core part of hemoglobin, and also, because of its iron uptake, the most resistant part of the molecule to decay. And that's the thing. What is found is degraded remnants of proteins, like heme, and bits of chemically altered collagen, both of which are already very resistant molecules, but which still aren't actually found in their original state. Nothing in science says that a chemically altered collagen protein that has had some of its original atoms replaced with very solid iron bonds in an extremely resilient protein must decay away under all conditions after a few tens of millions of years. It's just Matt's intuition coupled with possibly intentional misunderstanding of what was actually found in dinosaur bones that leads him to think this. Oh, and to head any creationists in the comments off at the pass, if you want to talk about Mark Armitage's supposed Triceratops soft tissue, well, get him to actually publish how we determined it was a Triceratops horn, and get him to give an actual site map, which is proper in real paleontology papers. Until then, his find is completely worthless, and I'm also going to say that it's just as likely a Bison latifrons as a T. horridus. You can't just give a vague location for a find and then declare it to be Triceratops. That's not how paleontology works. That's not how science works. That's just saying, trust me, bro. But science is precisely about not trusting your bros and checking their work instead.
But oh, it lasted millions of years.
Yes, molecular fossils lasted for millions of years.
Anybody that believes that is gullible.
Matt, you think there is air in space so that the sun can burn because it's on fire. Maybe calling other people gullible isn't a good look for you.
You're a gullible person if you believe that.
Matt, you think Fox News is a reliable source for peer-reviewed science. Maybe calling other people gullible isn't a good look for you.
Does anybody in here remotely think that that's even possible for the soft tissue to last 65 million years?
This was filmed at Dinosaur Adventureland, convicted spouse abuser Kent Hovind's compound. Polling that place about science is like polling a remedial high school math class about tensor calculus. Plus, if they disagree, they're in danger of being kicked out and becoming homeless. I wonder if they're all going to agree with the guy their cult leader seems to be grooming to take his place.
And here's how they answer that. Well, you see, it's about it was contaminated.
No, the idea that these finds stem from contamination is counter to the idea that they represent preserved material intrinsic to the animal whose bones they were found in. The idea is that perhaps modern life infiltrated either the fossil itself before sampling, or at least the samples after they were taken. This would mean that the biomolecules in question are actually recent and not ancient. This is actually something that argues against the idea that these biomolecules could be preserved in altered form.
What happens if you contaminate blood? It deteriorates worse.
I mean, no. No, it doesn't. It just can no longer be tested, since you need blood to be contamination-free to know what's in there. I guess it could deteriorate faster if the contamination was something that ate blood, like some bacteria, but that's not the only thing that could be contaminating the blood. But also, let's be clear, the claim isn't that dinosaur blood was contaminated and that's why it's still there. The idea is that the heme reported isn't actually from dinosaur blood at all. Instead, it's extrinsic contamination from a modern source, and there are no remnants of blood at all. It's honestly kind of astounding just how wrong Matt can get all of this.
It was contaminated. Do you know what a stupid argument that is?
Well, I know how stupid this strongman is, yes. That's kind of why no one is making that argument. As a rule of thumb, if Matt Powell says something is stupid, he's probably describing a strawman that no one actually argues for. Because, yes, it is stupid, and only he is stupid enough to actually think anyone is making that argument.
Oh, but it was fossil. The blood was fossilized. Wait a minute. You say a fossil takes 10,000 years to form.
No, I don't. It varies considerably. Some fossils can form fairly rapidly, others slowly. That's why taphonomy is a whole science. It's the science of how and why things turn into fossils.
Is blood going to sit there in the ground for 10,000 years?
No, and blood has never been found in a dinosaur fossil. Heme isn't blood. Even the structures morphologically consistent with red blood cells that were found do not constitute blood with or without heme.
Waiting to be fossilized?
Things don't sit around waiting to be fossilized. The process starts once the remains in question are buried.
No. They say, well, it's the method of the fossilization of the bone.
Right. That's that whole taphonomy thing Matt has apparently never heard of. If you want to know how it is that some particular structure was preserved when it normally isn't, you have to look at the taphonomy of the find, and that's exactly what you do when you want to know how a bone was preserved.
The iron in the blood, then. Okay, great. Do you see organisms getting encapsulated by iron when they die in nature?
It's like Matt can't even hear himself talk. He gave the answer. The iron in the blood, intrinsic, not extrinsic iron. Heme already has iron because it uses that iron to bind to oxygen, and that's how oxygen is transported through the body. Nothing had to wait around for extra iron to encapsulate it.
They say, well, if we put iron or blood in iron...
Nope, blood already has iron. At least red blood does. Some other kinds of blood don't, like the copper-based blue blood of horseshoe crabs. To be technical, though, they don't have blood, they have hemolymph, but it's still a fluid that transports the oxygen, and their hemoglobin analog, hemocyanin, contains copper.
It preserves the cells. That must have been how it lasted.
The thing is, we know this iron can preserve, not necessarily the cells, but some fairly robust biomolecules as molecular fossils. That is to say, it's not exactly the same chemical, but it's recognizably similar.
This was found nowhere near iron deposits.
You know, except the iron in the blood.
This was not found near iron. And yes, even if you put dinosaur soft tissue in an airtight jar, and then put that airtight jar in another airtight jar and another airtight jar, it's going to deteriorate.
You get a citation for that? And here's the thing. This soft tissue has deteriorated. So I'm not sure what the point is.
I don't care if it's airtight. It's going to deteriorate. Anybody that says that dinosaur soft tissue could last 65 million years, they are out of their mind. They are gullible people, period.
Certainly, if they said that it could last that long without deteriorating, they are. But the finds in question aren't someone cracking open a dinosaur femur to find fresh marrow and flowing blood. It's molecular remnants that have to be soaked in acid for weeks to get anything like soft, and traces that might be blood cells with bits of heme, not even hemoglobin.
And if you vouch for that, you are a gullible person. If you really believe that.
If you really believe that Matt Powell can actually report the beliefs of others accurately, you're really gullible.
They say, well, that's not enough evidence. I need cross-examined evidence. You need to be able to cross-examine. What about the dinosaur tracks that are 65 million years old in the old time strata? Oh, really? Is it just a coincidence that we find man tracks with dinosaur tracks in these layers that you say are 65 million years old?
There are no such tracks. And I love that that picture is from menwithdinosaurs.blogspot.com. That site has numerous obvious hoaxed prints, including the ones Matt is showing, as well as numerous videos from the known fraudster and potential AI-controlled android, Carl Baugh, operator of the Creation Museum in Glen Rose, Texas, which, not coincidentally, is near Biloxi, Texas, which has a lower Cretaceous trackway, which famously has purported human tracks. Many of these tracks, such as the ones shown by Matt, were carved intentionally as hoaxes during the Great Depression, to drum up tourism and for sale. Technically, this makes them frauds. But, you know what? Desperate times and all. I won't judge the folks from 1930s Biloxi too harshly. Who I will judge harshly are people like Powell, who perpetuate a nearly century-old hoax simply in the name of lying to Christians. There are some purported man tracks that are not deliberate hoaxes, but these are in fact dinosaur tracks. You see, the mud that formed the tracks was quite deep and soft, and when certain dinosaurs, such as ornithomimids, walked across the mud, their toes sank in entirely, and so deeply that even their metatarsals left an impression in the mud. When the foot was then lifted back out, the track would partially collapse, leaving behind a vaguely human-shaped outline. But if you look closely, you can still see the 3 walking toes of the original dinosaur foot. Interestingly, Creation Ministries International has Biloxi tracks on a list of arguments that they think creationists should not use. And Answers in Genesis, dicks though they be, have an article saying that creationists should not use these as evidence for the coexistence of humans and non-avian dinosaurs. Both of these are linked in the description.
I was in a debate with Dr. Kenny Rhodes from Reasons to Believe, and I brought this up to him, right? And he looked at me, he goes, well, even though it looks like a man footprint, and anatomically it may be the same, how do you know there wasn't a creature that looked just like a man?
First, I don't know if that story is true, but if you want to say that there are human footprints, you first have to show some evidence. And all Matt here has done is show a picture of a couple of fake footprints. Because yes, the dinosaur footprint is also fake. And then he just declared that there are human footprints alongside lower Cretaceous dinosaur footprints. Of course, I'd also wonder how these footprints formed during a global flood, since flood deposits characteristically destroy all trace fossils such as footprints. But yeah, if we were to find any anatomically modern human prints in the Cretaceous, I would find that pretty compelling, no matter what Dr. Rhodes has to say about it.
Talk about believing things without evidence.
Like there are authentic trackways at Biloxi. I know, weird, right?
It is unbelievable what unbelievers will believe to remain unbelievers. Unbelievable.
Dr. Kenny Rhodes is a Christian creationist. He's not an unbeliever. Let's just read some of his biography from Reasons to Believe. Kenny Rhodes is an ordained Southern Baptist pastor with over 25 years in pastoral ministry. Kenny first started evangelizing on the streets of Manteca and Stockton, California, in the early 90s. It was in response to the questions that people asked him concerning the reliability of the Bible, the existence of God, and science that motivated his journey to be prepared to give a defense of the Christian faith. As a result, Kenny spent the next 16 years in college, seminary, and pastoral ministry. Kenny holds a PhD in theology and an MDiv, and specializes in the doctrine and existence of God, textual criticism, and the metaphysics of Thomas Aquinas. He also has an unceasing interest in cosmology and astronomy, which explains why he has followed the ministry of Reasons to Believe and Hugh Ross since 1990. Kenny is the author of the theological and apologetic handbook, The One Who Is, The Doctrine and Existence of God, which Dr. Norm Geisler called the best handbook he has seen on this topic. Kenny is also the co-editor and co-author of the systematic theological tome entitled Evangelical Bible Doctrine. I don't know. Doesn't sound like an unbeliever to me.
But you don't have to take my word for it.
The full RTB biography is linked in the description.
And don't get angry at me over that. Don't get angry at me for telling you the facts.
Tell you what, dear audience, I don't think Matt has given a single fact in this. If you can find any facts he has given, please leave that fact as a comment on this video. While you're at it, why not like the video? And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that with the subscribe button just below this video. Don't forget to use the bell icon to turn on all notifications so you're always notified when I post new content.
For telling you the truth that you should have heard when you went to school and learned that the universe popped into existence by nothing with no God.
Man, I was homeschooled by evangelical Christian parents, spent about 3 years in a public school, then went to a Catholic school. That does not describe my schooling at all. And if in public schools the science teachers are teaching kids that there is no God, that's a problem. That's not their place. And if it is happening, I'll join with Matt to put political and legal pressure to make it stop. Public school is not the place for teachers to push their religious positions on students. But I also am not sure that this is happening to any great degree with atheism. although I do know of instances of teachers doing this with Christianity. That being said, if science contradicts some aspect of your religion, that's not reason for the teachers to skip over the science. Sorry. Turns out that basically all of science contradicts young Earth creationism. So until the creationists managed to publish papers in real journals overturning pretty much all of cosmology, astronomy, trigonometry, population genetics, paleontology, nuclear physics, hydrology, material science, relativity, the inverse square law, thermodynamics, and genetics, just to name a few, their ideas have no place in any science classroom.
Folks, the public school system is completely absurd what they're teaching.
Once again, citation needed.
Monkeys surfing, dinosaurs farting to death.
Neither of which is a scientific consensus, and neither of which are taught in public schools to my knowledge. Also, as far as I know, Matt here has never went to a public school, being homeschooled his whole life, so how would he know? Now, I want to take a second to say that homeschooling is not necessarily a bad thing. Many very intelligent parents give their kids great educations at home. But also, many underqualified parents use intentionally misleading curricula, such as ABECA, to give their kids dangerously misleading propaganda throughout their childhood. And the result is people like Matt Powell, who seriously thought that the sun needed air to burn in space. Because apparently it's a fire that needs oxygen.
Squids and octopi coming from outer space. Look, they're rescue devices.
None of which so far are the actual consensus, or even in most cases, fringe ideas in science. They're misunderstandings that Matt got from reading Fox News headlines of pop-sci articles about papers.
Are weak, and you always need to point that out. If you're going to debate with them, point it out. It's a very weak argument. Be respectful.
These would be weak arguments, which is why, to my knowledge, no one has used them to support evolution or counter creationism. But as far as respect, let's hear what Matt thinks is an appropriate level of respect.
No, it's all about what you have done. And the people that you've gone to behind my back and lied to and said, oh, Matt said this about you, and done that.
Who?
I'm not going to give names, Jeremy, but I will say this. There's been several people that have come to me and said, Jeremy said that you said this about so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And don't you lie to me because you know that it's true.
Nope. Just that one time, and I thought we took care of it.
Nope, there's plenty more. And you're bold-faced lying to me.
Nope.
Yeah, you are.
You talking about the Von Gods talking to you?
I'm not going to say who.
Because it has nothing to do with me. They
Jeremy,
told me.
you
it has nothing
are
to do. It has
insane.
nothing to do with me. It's all you. It's all on your shoulders, man.
All on my shoulders.
You did something wrong that they're not telling me. They said that you did something wrong against them.
No, you are a big tattletale. And you just go around to people and make up a bunch of bullcrap. Dude,
Are we going to fix the window?
No, because there's no parts. I thought there was parts here, Jeremy. And you're
Well,
scared.
then
You're
let's go
scared to death to talk to me. You are. Dude, it's not a joke. You're a skinny little runt baby that can't think for himself. And you come here, you constantly leech off me, then you go complain to other people, oh, Matt's taking advantage of me. Dude, you will go to hell! I am not joking! Look at me!
Matt, stop.
Look at me!
Stop.
You look at me right now!
Stop!
That
I came here for
has
the
nothing to
window.
do with this.
I came here.
We are going to talk about
You're gonna
this.
smile.
You are insane! You think I am yelling too hard? You have lost your mind!
Stop!
You're going to talk to me.
No!
You're going to talk to me right now.
I'm getting out of
You're
here.
acting like a woman. Why don't you
No,
talk to me like a man?
Acting like a woman. I came here for the stupid
You're
window.
acting like a woman, dude. And we can't fix the window.
Nothing
I'll
more,
take care of the
nothing
window.
less.
But you know what?
Then
We
take
need
care
to
of the
take
window.
care of this.
No.
You go to the Von Gotts and tell Mrs. Von Gott, oh, Matt called you a witch. You know that's right. And I never said that. I said they practice certain things like witchcraft. But I never ever demeaned her character. And for you to just go over there and bold-faced lie, just like you've done with Daniel Botham and my brother, just like you've done with all sorts of people, then you're going to get angry at me for yelling at you. You're crazy.
I'm not crazy.
You are insane. You have lost your mind, Jeremy. And I love you too much just to sit here and say, oh, well, you're fine. Because you're not.
So yeah, that's the kind of respect that Matt Powell thinks is appropriate. So I think that's the kind of respect he deserves back.
But just point out it's a weak argument. And in some cases, we find, footprints on top of the dinosaur footprint.
That's yet another hoax from Biloxi. The supposed human print is obviously carved. It doesn't even slide towards the previous dinosaur print. Like, come on, man. That's not how tracks work.
I'm sorry, that means they existed at the same time. You cannot deny that. That's another cross piece of evidence there. It's cross-examined.
Oh, it's been cross-examined all right, and it's a hoax. Hence why both AIG and CMI know it's a hoax and don't want anyone using that argument for creationism.
They say, well, grass didn't evolve till 55 million years ago. Dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, so dinosaurs never saw grass.
That was an idea, but it turns out that science was off by about 10 million years. I mean, sure, that means the estimate was off by about 20%, but then young Earth creationists are off about the age of the Earth by about 75 million%. So,
So your Bible's wrong when the Bible says that the behemoth eateth grass as an ox.
What? Why? What does that have to do with anything?
No, the Bible is right. And we actually examined coprolites, dinosaur dung, and somehow it lasted 65 million years, guys.
Yes, as a permineralized fossil. It's not actually still dung. It's basically rock in the shape of dung, and rock can last quite a long time.
We found dinosaur dung. It lasted 65 million years, and guess what we found in it? Grass.
Yup.
The dinosaurs actually ate grass. It says, microscopic examination of the fossilized dinosaur dung from India now shows that the massive plant-eating dinosaurs munched heaping helpings of at least 5 different types of grass.
Hence why the date of the evolution of grass was pushed back a bit, because it was always based on fossil evidence and new evidence came along. That's how science is supposed to work. You go with the best evidence until you have new evidence come along. Not sure why this is a problem or why we're talking about behemoth, since, Job was written millions of years after all of this when grass basically covered the planet.
They're concluding all this off the fossil record, right? So they're saying, well, grass didn't exist when dinosaurs existed in the fossil record.
For most of the time of dinosaurs, this is true.
Pre-cambrian rock layers are supposedly the oldest layers that there are. It's where the jellyfish that we all descended from originated.
So by definition, Pre-cambrian is any rocks older than the Cambrian. So yeah, among the Pre-cambrian rocks are the oldest rocks. But there's a whole lot of Pre-cambrian geology, and it's not like it's right under the Cambrian and boom, you get primordial basalt from the accretion of the planet. There are many layers of igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rock, and many eras of Pre-cambrian, i.e. Proterozoic, Archean, and Hadean eras. Together, these make up the vast majority of the history of Earth. Also, jellyfish are not thought to be the ancestors of other animals. They're cnidarians, which are probably the basalmost branching members of Eumetazoa, although box jellies contend for that position too.
The sponge, our ancestor, the great-great-great-grandfather SpongeBob.
Sponges are probably karyotypic of the ancestors of Metazoa to some extent, but it's still not true to say that the common ancestor of all animals was a sponge. It was probably more sponge-like than actually being a member of Porifera. But which is it, Matt? Are we poriferans or cnidarians?
That's really what they believe. We're arguing against people that believe in literal Toon Network.
I really doubt that anyone believes humans literally evolved from the cartoon inhabitants of Bikini Bottom, and I don't think even Matt thinks that either. See, in addition to being a dick who likes to scream at people when he agreed to help them fix a window, he also thinks that adults who like fun are lame. For instance, he probably complained that my set here has a Godzilla picture, an Imperial Aquila, a replicator, has the floor and crystal from the Crystal Chamber, and some Power Rangers paraphernalia. Because all of that stuff is make-believe, as if that were news to me. Again, my evidence for this position of his is in the description. I can't imagine how miserable Matt must be, thinking he's not allowed to like fun. Every minute of his day must be very serious, and no frivolity is allowed. Matt, if you watch this, go play a game, read a book of fiction, get enthusiastic about some fandom. Just go do something purely because you like it. You'll be a happier and probably healthier person for it.
That is your ancestor. Nickelodeon. SpongeBob. That's literally what we're arguing against. People say, how do you always win the debates? I'm arguing against people that, for lack of a better word, idiots.
I can't tell if he really thinks his followers are dumb enough to take this bit seriously. I sure hope not.
I don't mean to say that to be rude, but sometimes you have to argue with literal idiots.
Yeah, he really does, though. And you know what? We all know it. But remember, the guy calling people idiots is the same guy who thinks that chicken legs evolved from dinosaur arms. Again, link in the description.
Pre-cambrian is before dinosaurs existed. Well, we find bird tracks before dinosaurs even existed in the Pre-cambrian rock layers. Wait a minute, didn't dinosaurs turn into birds?
Those aren't Pre-cambrian, they're Eocene, and the paper suggesting that they were Triassic was retracted. So let's see, the Pre-cambrian ended 541 million years ago, the Triassic started about 252 million years ago. So the wrong age for these tracks was already 300 million years later than Matt thinks, and the real age is more like 56 million years ago. So, about 500 million years younger than he thinks. I mean, he's only off by 1 order of magnitude. For a creationist, that's pretty good. They're usually off by like 4 to 6 orders of magnitude. Also, birds probably evolved in the mid-Jurassic, which started 174 million years ago. So, about 120 million years before those tracks. So I don't think this is much of a temporal paradox.
Why is it that there are bird tracks on the very bottom layers?
There aren't.
Here is what they say. This is what Charles Lyell said about these bird tracks.
And now we're on to different tracks. What the hell, Matt?
Remember, this is millions of years before birds existed, supposedly. Charles Lyell said that these tracks were produced. They weren't real bird tracks.
Okay, let's look at this paper he's citing, because he put up an actual paper on screen. This is from Alfred King's Pennsylvania Tetrapod Footprints from Western Pennsylvania, Lucas and Dahlman, 2013. Lyell argued that at least some of these tracks, including the supposed bird tracks Powell was focusing on, were man-made because they were sharply impressed despite being in coarse-grained sandstone, which shouldn't be able to have such impressions, and because the tracks crossed multiple bedding planes, which means that a single trackway could not have been produced at the same time if actually a fossil, since the bedding planes had to be laid down at different times. Otherwise, they wouldn't be bedding planes. The purported bird tracks in question were given the ichnotaxonomic name ornithicnites. The authors of the paper Powell is using note that these tracks are similar to the tracks of extant North American birds, such as quail, crow, and heron, and like Lyell said, are in coarse-grained sandstone, which could not reasonably preserve such tracks. So far as evidence for Precambrian birds, Matt has proposed some carvings in Pennsylvania rock, which, by the way, isn't Precambrian, and some Eocene tracks that at one time were thought to be Triassic. And again, both the Eocene and Triassic are long after the Cambrian.
It's Native American Indians that got bored and decided to draw some tracks in the Precambrian rock layers. That's literally what they're saying.
Except for the Precambrian part, yeah, basically, because the tracks are inconsistent with actual formation via birds walking on unconsolidated sand. It's basically impossible for these tracks to be anything else, unless the birds are time travelers who can somehow walk on multiple bedding planes, and who can also magically stabilize coarse-grained sandstone to give sharp impressions as it lithifies. Since all of this seems vastly more unlikely than humans making art the way humans have since they were humans, I, along with Lucas, Dahlman, and Lyell, conclude that these tracks are carvings. If Matt would like to contest this, I invite him to show how a bird could make such tracks across multiple bedding planes in coarse sand, which preserves sharply defined tracks after lithification. I await his paper with bated breath.
They're literally saying that Native Americans drew these tracks. If you believe that, you are gullible, period.
Why? Does Matt think Native Americans didn't carve things? I've seen ancient Native American petroglyphs myself in person. They're real, and humans have always carved and painted what they saw in nature. What about this is extraordinary?
You're gullible. Stop saying Christians are gullible for believing the Bible, a book written by goat herders. What's wrong with a bunch of goat herders?
I don't say that. Nothing is wrong with goat herders, and most of the biblical authors were probably well-educated scribes. The author of the Gospel according to Luke and Acts of the Apostles seems to have been well-educated, as was the author of the Gospel according to John, although other New Testament authors seem to have been a bit less well-educated. It also doesn't seem like any of them were goat herders. In fact, if the Pauline authorship is to be largely accepted for most of the works attributed to him, he was a tent maker, not a goat herd. And if the same is to be done for Luke, he was a doctor. The Bible being written by goat herders is indeed something I've heard people say, and they should stop. But the fact that some people are wrong about the Bible doesn't make Matt right about evolution.
Last I checked, that was actually a pretty good occupation back then, before electricity.
Last I checked, it still is. I mean, I like me some curried or jerked goat, and feta is one of my favorite cheeses. Thank you to all the modern goat herds.
So stop spewing your own confusion with yourself onto all of Christianity. We don't want it. The fallacy of false equivalence.
Wait, how is some atheist getting things wrong about the Bible the fallacy of false equivalence? I'm lost.
Are chickens related to the T-Rex? This is in a kid's book.
And Matt is not a kid, so maybe he should be addressing sources for adults.
Question, are chickens related to the T-Rex? Answer, yes. Science has revealed compelling evidence that the T-Rex actually evolved into a chicken.
Yep, that's wrong, and they shouldn't have said that. But here's Dapper from the past pointing out why, no, that's wrong, and yes, birds are still dinosaurs.
No, T-Rex did not evolve into birds. So, broadly speaking, birds came about in the mid to late Jurassic, depending on exactly how you want to define bird. Tyrannosauroidea also had diverged around then. Here's a cladogram of Coelurosauria, the most exclusive group of dinosaurs that includes both T-Rex and modern birds. You'll notice that among a large diversity of dinosaurs, including avomimids, raptors, troodontids, oviraptorosaurs, and therizinosaurs, tyrannosauroids are the least closely related to birds. T-Rex was not an ancestor to birds, and it wasn't particularly close to them in the grand scheme of things.
But again, if Matt had simply used a source for adults, he probably would have gotten much closer to the actual position of the scientific consensus that was given in his website for babies.
Folks, you know what we continuously find in the fossil record? Dinosaurs with birds in their stomachs.
Yeah, dinosaurs eat other dinosaurs. This isn't news, nor is it surprising.
But dinosaurs, wait a minute, they didn't exist with birds. They turned into birds.
No, avian and non-avian dinosaurs definitely coexisted. The fact that during the Middle Jurassic, avians had diverged from other dinosaurs doesn't mean that the other dinosaurs went extinct, especially since most other dinosaurs had very different niches from birds. This is just the same argument as, if humans evolved from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys? And the answer is the same. Evolution is about diversity, and when a new group evolves, and that doesn't mean that other members of the group it evolved from have to go extinct. They can go on to evolve yet other groups, which happen with humans and other apes, as well as birds and other dinosaurs.
No, you find dinosaurs with birds in their stomachs.
Again, as expected.
They didn't descend into birds, devolve into chickens. They ate them.
Yes, the non-avian dinosaurs that we find having eaten birds did not evolve into birds. They ate them. Just like a hawk will eat a sparrow, even though they both evolved from birds. Or heck, like how a human will eat a cow, even though they both evolved from mammals. The fact that Matt thinks this is a gotcha just shows his astounding ignorance of the ideas he's trying to criticize. This is on par with saying that Christianity is the belief that God is an alien from the Pleiades, and that humans die and go to live with the seven sisters in the afterlife. Matt wouldn't consider a criticism of that idea a good criticism of Christianity, nor should he.
And we have proof for that. You bring this up to them, and they don't have a clue of what you're talking about.
Perhaps people not familiar with the dinosaur fossil record don't know that dinosaurs ate other dinosaurs, but since most 6-year-olds know that, I doubt it.
Well, that's not true. There's no fossil evidence and you show them the actual photo, and they don't believe it.
What photo? Figure 1 from O'Connor et al. 2011 that shows a microraptor with an enantiornithine bird skeleton about where the stomach should be? I should note that I did not link this study because I had trouble finding a good link for it. Instead, I included a Sci-Hub link as an example of where you should not go to get the paper, because that's piracy, and I'm sure that O'Connor and their co-authors would not want you to read their work without paying the editor of the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. Anyway, yeah, this paper, which I doubt Matt read, reports on a microraptor specimen with a bird that was probably swallowed whole. One fun thing is that because Microraptor had 4 feathered wings, many creationists, like Answers in Genesis, have decided that it is a bird, even though it's a dromaeosaur, or, to give it the colloquial name, a raptor, like Velociraptor, made famous by Jurassic Park. I don't know who is disputing this paper, it's not controversial, and it came after the presumption that non-avian dinosaurs probably ate birds had already been basically universal, because why wouldn't they? But hey, if you happen to find someone who for some reason doesn't think that dinosaurs ate birds, do direct them to this paper. Just not, I repeat, not through Sci-Hub, which is an easy way to get tens of thousands of papers for free without being a student or staff at a university or paying through the nose for access. I do not endorse such things at all, and have linked to the website only as an example of where not to get your papers from. Last, I'll note that this is a very short paper because pretty much all it has to say is, hey, you know that thing that everyone has assumed happened? Well, it did. Neat. So you can read this paper in a very short amount of time. It's literally 4 pages long.
They say, well, how can I believe in a God that I can't see? Why don't you start believing what you can see first?
Like faunal succession in the fossil record, which is well explained by evolution, and a dinosaur eating a bird, which was expected by basically every paleontologist who ever bothered to think about it, I feel like most people do already believe that.
It's called delusional, if you're not going to believe what you can see.
I don't think that's the gotcha he thinks it is.
And if you believe things without evidence, you're holding to a position that's indefensible.
You mean, like that air in space must be different, but, the sun needs it to burn? Yeah, that is pretty indefensible. Also, I wonder how Mr. Peel, the giant inflatable banana he kept in his yard, is doing. Did it make it to rural Alabama? I wonder.
This is proof that the devil himself exists. The fact that you could believe in evolution and be so deceived and so tricked is proof that Satan deceives.
Even if I grant that evolution is false, I don't think people being wrong about science proves Satan. I think that people could probably be wrong about things regardless of Satan's real existence. But also, what is the implication of this? Is Satan guiding science programs and journal editing staffs around the globe? Are professors worldwide being beset by demons? Like, what's the actual mechanism of Satan tricking people into believing evolution?
That you have been deceived by the God of this world, which have blinded the minds of them which believe not, the Bible says.
Okay, so everyone who accepts evolution is being individually tricked by Satan? Even the Christian pastors and apologists like the aforementioned Dr. Kenny Rhodes? I thought God was supposed to protect Christians from things like that. Is God doing a bad job? Or are they not real Christians? Or is perhaps Satan just not actually deceiving people into believing evolution? Honestly, I think Matt would say that they're not real Christians because if there's one thing fundamentalist Christians like more than Jesus, it's calling other Christians fake Christians.
They say, you're so superstitious, you believe in the devil? You better believe I do.
I don't care if someone believes in the devil, but if you're going to say that a certain particular thing in this world is the direct cause of his, you're going to need to back that up.
Because he deceived you into believing pond scum to people evolution, bacteria to biologists, goo to you, the zoo to you, fish to fishermen. That's what they think.
Nice wordplay, but, where's the evidence of direct satanic involvement? Is there a secret pentagram under the floor of all biology department offices of non-creationist schools? Is there a secret final part of getting a PhD where after the traditional snake fight, you are taken into a ritual chamber and a demon possesses you?
So don't come at me with, oh, it's superstitious to believe in that old book. You know, I'm glad that it is an old book and that it's been around for a long time. You're admitting by saying it's an old book that it is historic.
No. Things can be historical and old or historical and new. Antiquity itself is not a guarantee of accuracy.
That it is reliable. When they say it's an old book written a long time ago, I'm glad God didn't leave us without his word for thousands of years.
Okay, but there are older books, like the Vedas, that Matt doesn't think are historical, so he's simply contradicting himself if age means reliability. Otherwise, he'd have to serve the Hindu gods, because their book came first.
God, we have the word of God, and that we've had it for a long time. You're admitting that it's been around for a long time.
That's not an admission. As far as I know, there is no dispute that the Bible is a work of ancient and antiquity literature. And this is directed to Matt. Matt, if you find a non-Christian saying that any part of the Bible is a modern composition, let me know, and I'll make a video pointing out why that is stupid.
When I bring forth my Bible model, they say it's your Bible model, ha. Yeah, I bring forth my Bible model.
Yeah, see, the reason that's laughable is because science isn't based on an old book, it's based on the evidence. And if your Bible model is accurate, you wouldn't need the Bible to demonstrate it. Yet, no one goes that route. They start with the Bible, and then use post hoc rationalizations to force the data to fit. And they toss out any data that don't fit. There's a reason why no one who approaches the data finds that they support a recent origin for the universe and separate ancestry for life, and then finds themselves surprised that there are a few religions that have always been teaching that. In every instance I'm aware of, someone had a prior, and perhaps even new, commitment to one of these religions, and then slowly started forcing their data to fit their theology.
And they try to argue against it. They say, oh, it's crazy, you think it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. You Google, rained for millions of years. They think it rained for 2 million years.
So this is a reference to the Carnian Pluvial episode. The Carnian is the first stage of the Middle Triassic. The period in question is not constant rain for 2 million years, even though that's what you might think based on the clickbait titles of various videos about it, like the PBS Eons video Matt showed the thumbnail of. Instead, it was a period of unusually frequent rainfall in Pangaea. Instead of a 2 million year rainstorm, you should think of it more like spending 2 million years in Seattle, a place where there are only 71 sunny days per year on average. It's a lot more rain than normal, but it wasn't constant rain for 730 million days, or 830 million days since the days were shorter then.
So remember, they think rain created itself from nothing, with no God, and rained down into the oceans.
No, the rain evaporated from the ocean. You know, like how rain works. Is Matt claiming that the water cycle is directly miraculous?
2 million years.
2 million years of it being rainier than normal, not 2 million years of constant non-stop rain.
What did the first single-celled organism eat? That's what I'd like to know.
Probably chemicals, especially sulfur compounds. Chemosynthesis is still the basis for many ecosystems' food webs, such as those found in hot springs on land and hydrothermal vents in the ocean.
There was no organic material. It just came alive. What's it going to eat? Hard rock?
We already covered this. Dissolved compounds in the water.
You know, we find a T-Rex, right, under 50 feet of sediment that had suffocated to death when it was buried.
I'm going to need a citation on that cause of death there, because except in cases of perimortem skeletal trauma, which is hard to distinguish from post-mortem skeletal trauma, you can't really tell the cause of death of a fossil very easily.
There's no other way to explain something like that other than Noah's flood. They say a local flood could have done it. No, false. It would have just ran away.
Well, local floods do kill large and swift animals today. Plus, we still haven't been given a reason to take seriously the idea that this animal drowned. How do we know that it didn't die of some poison, then fall into a swift-flowing river? We don't even know the taphonomy of the present specimen. Unfortunately, I can't seem to find a description of this specimen or even a consistent identification, with some publications calling this Gorgosaurus libratus and others Albertosaurus sarcophagus. So not even Matt has any clue how this animal was buried, let alone knowing it was buried in a global flood.
T-Rex dinosaur simply would have ran away. It had to have been globally catastrophic. That's why we find 10,000 adult myosaur buried in the center of the United States that had left their young behind.
That probably was a flood, but again, large and even fast animals die in floods all the time. Look, this is a tiger that died in a flood, and tigers are not known for their inability to move quickly. They're extremely fast.
They say, why are you bringing up the same tired old arguments that creationists always have used since the 1980s? Well, because they're right.
No.
The truth stays the truth. They say, well, what if you're wrong? I know I'm not wrong.
Anytime you have complete confidence in anything other than mathematical proof or your own existence, there's a pretty good chance you're wrong. And Matt certainly doesn't know he's not wrong, because he demonstrably is. He's conflating knowledge with confidence. Knowledge is justified true belief. What he has is high but misplaced confidence. Being confident says nothing about whether you're right on its own.
Because 2 + 2 is 4. It will always be 4. The facts will always be the facts. Again, these are the fundamentals of young Earth creationism.
Oh great, we're going from something that can't have a mathematical certainty, like the truth of the Bible or evolution, to just math. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with comparing scientific confidence or the historicity of the Bible to math. And yes, the facts will always be the facts. And one of those facts is that the age of the Earth has been measured, and it's about 4.5 billion years old. And another fact is that evolution has been observed.
When I was in college, I played college basketball. And my coach always told me that if you master the fundamentals, you'll be a great player. And if you are a creationist and you want to get in the middle of this fight, just master the fundamentals and you will win every time.
I agree, master the fundamentals and share this video with your college professors. Not Matt's original video. They might die of an overdose of stupidity unless they built up a tolerance to it like me. But feel free to share this video with them for a bit of a laugh. Anyways, that's the end of Matt's video, so it's the end of mine too. I hope you enjoyed this look at the least Jewish Matt Powell I know of. If you did, hit that like button. If you didn't, hit dislike and tell me what you didn't like in the comments. Either way, please do subscribe to the channel and remember to turn on all notifications so you're always notified when I release new content. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. Thanks for watching this video, but before you go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovend, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Chris Love, Landon Knoll, Sphincter of Doom, and Patrick Dennis. Without the help of the people whose name you see on screen right now, this channel simply wouldn't exist. If you'd like to join the team, there's links in the description to my Patreon as well as a join button right below this video that will allow you to join on YouTube. Joining gets you access to an exclusive Discord server, early access to my videos, often more than a month in advance, as well as other perks depending on how much you decide to pledge. However, if a monthly or annual pledge isn't for you, there are other ways to support the channel, including a merch store down in the description. And hey, just liking and sharing this video always helps a lot. Thank you very much. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur.